In this video tutorial, I'd like to talk about the difference between the addition and addition plus applications. In the last video, we saw the addition application and how there are limited options for the teacher to customize this application. For example, the teacher chooses what type of counting unit they want the students to have, the blocks, fingers, or dollars. And then they choose how many of each block they want to give to the students, and then the table will randomly generate the questions based on how many manipulatives the students have to answer it. But there may come times where you actually want to write the questions for your students. One of the first examples that comes to mind for me is this addition activity is always going to randomly generate addition and subtraction questions. And if your students are just beginning to work on addition, they may not be ready for subtraction yet. And because I can't turn off the subtraction questions inside of addition, that might be a time where I want the ability to custom write my own questions. And that's what we get with Addition Plus. So I'm going to check and add this one to my activity pack as well. I'm going to come into the center and I'm going to click on this bubble, but of course, as always, you can click the tab at the top of the screen if you prefer. And just like we've done with our previous videos, we're going to take a look at what's on the screen before we begin building. Just as we saw with multiple choice, down the left-hand side, we're going to have a list of the questions that we're writing, the plus to add new questions, the red X to delete any questions that we've decided to remove, and then those arrows to allow us to move questions up and down if we choose to change the order. Just to the right of that window, we have the area where we're going to type in our question text. Audio, as always, for every question and answer choice when you're working within these table activities. And then if we want to have a background image, we can include some sort of a background image in there. Step 2 is where we're going to select the type of manipulatives we want our students to have. For this one, we have blocks and money only, no fingers like we saw in the addition application. Just above where we choose the counting type is where we're going to set the answer to the question. So the answers will always be in whole numbers, whether you're using blocks or money. And you would type in a question like, what's 5 plus 5? And then, of course, down here in the answer space, I would put 10. Or to correct myself, it doesn't have to be whole numbers. For example, 100 is the equivalent of $1. So if I wanted it to be $1.25, my answer would be 125. You still have the option, just like we saw in the addition activity, to choose to include or remove a particular type of coin that you might not want the students to have. For example, take out that dollar piece that I don't know if they're familiar with. You can choose to include that audio if you want the table to tell them that this is 1 cent, 5 cents, 10 cents, things like that. Over here to the right-hand side, we've got an option in this one that's unique to the Addition Plus, and this is called token distribution. We have two options here. We can allow every user at the table to have all of the items or all of the manipulatives. So in this example, every student gathered around the table would have pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters available to them. Or we can give them what SMART calls a subset. So if I had my table set to 3 students, not all of the students would get the pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. Student A might only get quarters and dimes. Student B might get quarters and nickels. Student C might get dimes and pennies. And I'm going to check this subset box so that when we start building our activity, you get a chance to see what that subset looks like when we go into our preview. So one last thing to take a look at before we begin building, and of course that is the area at the bottom of the screen. In every application, you have that option to include instructions, maximum of 45 characters for all the reasons previously stated in the other videos. And then, of course, you can always add audio to help your students understand the instructions when they're working on the table. So with that, let's come up here and let's start typing a question. My first example question is going to be, what is 5 plus 5? I could include the audio, but I think you've had a chance to see that by now. I could include a background image, but I think it would probably just be distracting for this one. I could possibly include a background image if I had something like a variety of different foods or items with a price tag on them. I could ask the students, how much money would you need to buy the apple? And they would have to pull out enough nickels, dimes, quarters to add up to the apple that has the price tag on it. But I'm going to keep this simple for the purposes of this video. So what is 5 plus 5? My answer over here is going to be 10. And I think I'm just going to give the students dimes, nickels, and pennies in order to answer this one. And again, I'm not going to go through and record the audio again because I think that you've seen that one done in the previous videos. So I'm going to click the plus over here to add another question. And you'll notice when we add another question, it resets everything. It went away from the money that we had selected for the first question back to the default at the top of our counting type, which is the blocks. It went away from our token distribution, that subset option that we had checked. So as you go through with each of the questions that you generate in Addition Plus, you will have to reset all of these things if you want to include them. So for this one, what is 6 plus 1? My answer is 7. I'm going to use the blocks this time, so there's no need to put in 70 or 700 like I would if I wanted them to do whole numbers. And once again, I'm going to turn off some of the larger blocks that I know I don't need to answer this question, and I'm going to choose that subset option again. So now that we have 2 questions created here, let's go ahead to our preview and take a look at how this will look when it's on the table. So here we have the first question, which was the one where we gave the students money. You can see that the student at the bottom of the screen here has both dimes and pennies to answer the question. The student over here on the left-hand side of our screen has dimes and pennies as well, but the student at the top has nickels and pennies. So we are working together. It's not that each student has to separately or individually answer the question, what is 5 plus 5? If the first student quickly puts a nickel onto the table, you can see that we instantly have 5 cents for everyone working at the table right now. If the next student puts out a dime, it's adding all of the money up. So again, we're encouraging that collaboration with this particular activity here. So because I included small coins and did an answer that's going to require us to get all the way up to $10, I think we're going to go ahead and move past this question so that I can give you a chance to take a look at the blocks here. So what if you've decided that you don't like the way a question is written? Oops, I meant this to be what is 5 cents plus 5 cents, but instead I've got these whole numbers here. I just want to jump to the next question. Over here on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see arrows to go back and forward. And if I click the arrow to go forward or the arrow that points to the right, I can skip this question. So as the teacher, if I need to go back and edit it, which in the case of that one, I do, I can click to jump to the next question so that I can see if I need to make changes to this one as well. For this one, we also did the subset, so you can see that the student at the bottom has 1s and 10s. On the left, we have 1s and 10s, and at the top, we have 5s and 1s. Again, we're taking the combination or total from the students all around the table. And just like we saw with the addition activity, it pauses for a moment after we enter all of the units to give us time to be thoughtful. So the students, again, can't just rush through throwing all of their blocks into the center of the table until the table tells them that they're right and they can stop. So this is the difference between the addition, where the teacher doesn't write the questions, the table randomly generates them, and the Addition Plus, where you do write the questions, and the students also have blocks and money to answer the questions, but no fingers in the Addition Plus activity.